Two Wheels this week, Jeff returns to Cadwell Park to learn more of the skills required to be a race marshal. And we chat with the man who thinks nothing of doing more miles in a month than most of us do in a couple of years. But first, here's Wayne on a road test.
Now you may remember last time on Two Wheels my road test was on a little Yamaha slider, a little scooter. Or was it a scooter? It wasn't very sure. It was a scooter without leg shields or body panels. In fact, it thought it was a mini Street Fighter. And then I complained because I wanted something a bit bigger. So they give me something a bit bigger. They've given me this, the Yamaha Aerox. An Aerox 100, mind, it's a big one, a powerful one, and it has in fact got a statement on the side saying performance. So we thought we'd try it. Then the camera crew arrive on probably the coldest day of the year. Just my luck. You know, the cold doesn't really bother me at all because you've got the right gear on, it's warm as toast in here, and all I've got to do is enjoy myself on the road. And I'm doing exactly that. I am actually so pleased that it's the 100cc version, because there is a 50cc version which is indeed restricted to 30 miles an hour. And this one being twice the cc, does it have twice the power? Well, it does in actual fact, because the little 50cc has got 3.7 horsepower, whereas this big, powerful 101cc is 7.5 horsepower, so twice the power. Does that mean twice the speed? Well, in actual fact, it does, because, of course, the legally restricted 50cc version does 30 miles an hour, and this one, with a little bit of wind behind you, down a slope, will indeed do around 60 miles an hour, so twice the speed. So it's quite an enjoyable machine. And does it stop well? Well, it stops plenty well enough, if need be. Pull them levers and it works a disc on the front, but only a drum on the back, and that is one of the noticeable differences between this, the 100 and the 50cc. The 50cc only has a disc front and rear, and this one has a drum at the rear. Not only is that the different point, would you believe that the 100 is in fact very, very slightly lighter than the 50? I can't work that one out. Right, so let's have a look at this thing in a little more detail. We'll start at the front. Like a lot of modern day scooters, it does resemble a superbike with the fancy headlights and all the moulding down there, and nowadays with a great big fat front tyre. As we move back on this particular model, I quite like this. Apart from it looking rather trendy, also this is going to deflect the wind away from your legs. Now in my case, I've got myself a nice thick pair of leggings and a pair of proper motorcycle boots, but if you're just commuting, that would definitely take away the weather from your legs, so you don't always have to dress up on your scoot. As we move back a little bit, I just want to show you down here that we have a proper glove compartment. Look at that. In there you can put a few bits and pieces, your makeup in the case of Paul or whatever, but this is also where the two-stroke oil lives, so it keeps it nice and clean and tidy and out of the way. Back to the seat. Nice big seat. Hey, and I want to say something, knock me down with a feather. There is indeed a big hole under the seat. Now that's nothing special, you might say. Not on this particular bike. There is the big cavernous hole. Alright, you can put your helmet in there when you've finished riding your scoot, or when you're carrying something. So a big compartment to put your bits and pieces. But you may remember on the old Yamaha slider, no aperture at all, blank. It's where the petrol tank was and the oil tank was. So that is definitely a good point. Plenty of room to put your bits and pieces. Move back a little bit here, the pad for the passenger, and it is literally a soft pad, and if you've got problems with piles, it's perfectly formed. There, look. But grab handles either side, and right down here, foot pegs. So it's not exactly accommodating for a passenger, but it wouldn't be, would it? After all, it's a little scooter, and although that's a nice big seat and you may travel some distance on your own, I wouldn't have thought you'd travel a distance with a passenger on the back. So there we are. Nice, stylish, funky machine. So if you've got yourself a trendy scooter like this, in this beautiful blue to match my apparel and look stylish, young, like myself, then you could always pull the birds. Now, have I got any bread with me? Let's see. All right then, Twinkle. All right, darling. Do you know what I have worked out all by myself? The reason why they give me these scooters to road test is because they are aimed at the stylish and trendy young person. So obviously they're going to pick me. Believe that, you'll believe absolutely anything. The truth is, this is fun. As it is the bigger version of the Aerox, the 100cc, it's obviously going to travel a little bit quicker than the 50. But what I have noticed is the 50cc versions actually accelerate from the 0 speed up to around 25 mile an hour quicker than this one. But once you get over the 25 to the 30 mile an hour onwards, this baby sails along so quick it's surprising, very surprising. And as it does around 55-60 mile an hour, as quick as you are legally allowed to go on, say, a dual carriageway for example, it's plenty quick enough for everyday use. So what's it going to cost you for the Aerox 100? Well, it's a couple of £100 more than the 50. Just over £2,000 and around £1,800 for the 50cc Aerox. So as long as you're 17 and older, you may as well fork out the extra couple of £100 and go for the 100cc version, because believe you me, it's an awful lot more fun. So you probably gathered that I actually quite enjoy riding this little machine. It's the right size, physically that is. It's comfortable when you're sat on it, the handlebars meet your hands nicely and you feel like a presence on the road. It's quite a big machine. Not so much of a problem touching the ground for me, but maybe the ladies might just struggle a little bit, those that are even more vertically challenged than my very self. But generally when you're rolling down the road, it's fine. I've got to admit it's very stylish and the attention to detail is superb. I mean, the grips and the switch gear on the handlebars all blending neatly together. It's got rather attractive mirrors and yet still very practical, you can see over your shoulder. But I have gripes. I've got 3 major gripes. The first one, the main stand. It has a main stand, it doesn't have a side stand. I don't see why they don't have a side stand. It's a convenient factor and it's nice to just throw it on the side stand when you're rushing in and out of a shop. But it's got a main stand. Putting it on the main stand is hindered by the position of the kickstart. I don't want to see why they've got a kickstart. Modern day scooters, you just pull the brake lever and press the start button and away you go. Which brings me to the second point. Normally, ignition on, lever in, press the start button, bit of revs, sorted. In this case, it's got a manual choke. You actually use a choke lever. Now that might offer a bit of a problem to some people because you've got to work out how much choke you need according to whether the engine's cold or hot, and there's no temperature gauge on it. So work that one out for yourself. I don't understand why they have it when on an awful lot of other scoots there are automatic chokes. And my third gripe, its size. Not its physical size, its engine capacity. I want something bigger. I want something really big, huge, powerful. I'm not asking a lot, am I?
Well, that's all the classroom sessions finished for this morning. Now we're actually going out to do some practical work. So I'm going to catch up with Mike and just see what this session's all about.
Well, the first of the scenarios we're setting up this afternoon is a rider that's down, not being able to get out of the way himself, and so what we're going to do is to put him onto a scoop stretcher. We've bailed the rider up to protect him and then sent for a vehicle to remove him from harm's way. Right. At the British Superbike rounds, which may be 20 lap races, we wouldn't normally stop a race for this unless it's life-threatening injury. What we'd actually do is to bail them up, put them on a scoop stretcher, take them into a vehicle and then take them out to the medical centre where they can be dealt with more effectively.
But it's not just injured riders who need to be removed from the racetrack. A crash bike can also be a hazard to other racers, and for the purpose of this training exercise, this old Suzuki has had its petrol tank filled with concrete so that it better represents the weight of a racing superbike. What a clever idea. Well, Mike, it's certainly a pretty day, and I'm glad to have this little break to sort of grab you for a few minutes to ask you more about the race-safe setup and what it's all about. But first, can I ask, just how do you happen to become a marshal? How does it all start?
Well, I think for most people, they've got obviously an interest in either bikes or bike racing. And for many people, they want to become racers. Racing now is a prohibitively expensive activity, and a superb way of getting involved in the sport is to become a marshal.
Yeah, it's about as close as you can get, isn't it, really?
Very close indeed. And
Yeah.
of course you can marshal at the very top level, whereas for most riders, club meetings will be the highest they'll reach.
But it's a real commitment that they've got to make, isn't it? And so what sort of attributes does someone need? I mean, there's no specific qualifications, is there?
No, all we need is, all we ask for is keenness. We want them to be keen, to be dedicated, and to work as part of a team. That's probably the most important aspect of it.
Now, I saw some guys with licences, so
Yes.
even though they're volunteers, do they have to pass an exam, or do you just have to be registered? Or?
No, they have to be registered, and they have to attend one of our training days every 2 years. And that training day will obviously bring them up to date on the latest events, as obviously you've seen today, the latest regulation changes and so on.
So who's actually licensing them? I mean, is it the ACU or someone? Or
The ACU have their licensing scheme. We run one that runs in parallel to them and have our own, and so signatures are valid from either organisation.
Yeah, okay. And so if someone actually wanted to become a marshal, what do they do? If I was interested in doing it, what would I have to do?
I think it depends really what sort of marshalling you want to do, whether you want to do your local circuit or whether you want to travel around doing perhaps the British Superbike meetings. If you want to do your local circuit, contact your local bike racing club. There are plenty of those around the country, and they're always welcome volunteers. If you want to contact RaceSafe, contact RaceSafe.
And is RaceSafe for the Nationals, British Superbike?
British Superbike and World Championship events, yes, including the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
But the ACU have their own scheme, and they, I'm sure, would put you in touch with a local club if you didn't know who to get in touch with.
Well, that's it. That's how to be a race-safe marshal. In fact, it's a good guide on how to be a marshal at all on bike racing, but don't you be fooled. It's not an easy way of getting to see your favourite stars cracking round a circuit like this one. There's a lot of work to it. But if you're interested, you know what to do. Contact your local bike club, contact the ACU. So if you want to put something back into biking, now you know how to do it.
And after the break, we chat with the man who does more miles in a month than most of us do in a couple of years.
Snow-capped mountains, don't they look wonderful, eh? And they're even better from the seat of a bike, because I've ridden over the Alps into Italy and it's a fantastic experience. In fact, I've ridden all over Europe, even made it to the Czech Republic once. But how would you fancy doing 20,000 miles in a month? Now, overall, I've probably done 400,000 miles in my biking lifetime, which is a hell of a lot. That's to the moon and back. But mileage is like 20,000 miles in a month, over 620 miles a day, is nothing to one man. I'm going to see him, and I'll tell you this, he can still sit down. So who is this man, you're wondering? Well, let me give you a little bit more background information. In fact, I've had to put it on a clipboard because there's so much of it. He's someone who cycled around the world in 1981, and he got the Guinness World Record for that. He did it in 138 days on a bicycle. He did 4,100 miles cycling down the Nile. You getting warm yet? For 6 years, he was a hot air balloon pilot. He also took a couple of narrowboats from the Black Country to the Black Sea. Now, that's a strange thing to do, isn't it? 1992 saw him taking an Enfield on a world tour. Then in 1997, and I'll bet you get it now, he took a Triumph Daytona and became the fastest man around the world. Again, a Guinness World Record. 19,930 miles in 31 days. That's some record. Then in 1999, he did a top of the world tour where he took 15 unsuspecting bikers up to Alaska. Who is this man? It's Nick Sanders. Nick, that's a hell of a busy schedule I've just gone through.
Yeah.
But listen, before I start, who's the young fellow on your back there,
Well,
chewing a bit of grass?
It's my boy number 2, Juno. Yeah, we've got two boys.
So you do have some time off then?
I do occasionally get a bit of time off to play with my wife, yes.
Going through, I put a load of... I don't normally actually do this, but you've had such an involved life. I thought if I don't drop this down in some sort of order, we'd be all over the place. But your schedule, it made me think, is this a job that you've got, or is it a hobby? I mean, are you the sort of biking equivalent of Sir Ranulph Fiennes, you know, this inveterate explorer man?
Well, I've been biking and bicycling and adventuring for 20 years, you know, Jeff. It certainly isn't a hobby. It's a job which I love doing. So, you know, and I've just been earning a living from it. I've been very commercial about it, you know, since I started in 1981. And as for runoff fines, well, I don't know. I mean, you know, the British have a problem with it. They just sort of publicise, you know, Arctic explorers, don't they? And,
That's right. And he's a sir after all. You're not a sir
absolutely, yet. We have. Yeah, I'm not a sir. I don't suppose I ever will be.
Look, you started back in 1981, as you say, 20 years ago. What actually started you on this? You know, what made you think, oh, I think I fancy going around the world on a bicycle?
Well, I think it's because really I hadn't travelled a great deal as a child. You know, my parents were very ordinary people and they never went anywhere. My dad went to Paris once for a long weekend.
Yeah.
So I kind of overcompensated really, and I sort of thought, well, you know,
big time.
Yeah, I thought I'd like to go around the world, which I did in 81. I bicycled around the world, and I never stopped since. And subsequently, I've been through about 60 countries, and I get on very well with people. You know, I don't have problems, generally speaking. And if I do, I usually know how to get out of it.
When you cycled around, had you already got a bike licence? Because I've always had it in my head that you must have been a cyclist first, then a biker.
No, I've been biking ever since I had a Honda 90 step through, that kind of stuff. And then I had an MZ250 but belted all over the country with it. And then I got an Enfield, a 500 Bullet.
Yeah.
And no, I've been biking as long as I've been cycling.
Yeah.
It's just that I was never really commercial about the biking. I never got into the magazines and stuff. I really had another agenda at the time. But
you loved biking for what it was.
Oh yes, absolutely. I was always on my bike, and I'd put my dog in the back of my Enfield, and we'd go up and down the M1, God knows how many times.
And when you were on the Enfield, you went for a world record then, didn't you? Missed it, am I right?
Well, not really. With the Enfield, I mean, I bicycled around the world in 79 days.
Yeah.
And that was a Guinness record.
All right.
But with the Enfield journey, no. It's just because... Right, Mummy, come in with Mummy, please. Just grab hold of him.
It's only because he's crying a bit. Where were we? Yes, so you've done the cycle bit, you're on your Enfield.
The Enfield journey wasn't a record at all. It was just, you know, what you want to do when you get a motorbike. Well, for me, I wanted to bike around the world.
Yeah.
So I went through about 38 countries and 29,000 miles. And it was wonderful. I was just basically learning my trade.
Yeah.
Learning how to freight a bike, learning how to get out of difficult customs situations. And I went to Egypt when I was in Cairo. I had to go through something like 52 different offices to get my bike exported out of Cairo.
So it's just as bad as they say it is, really, when you get in some of these countries.
Well, it can be,
bureaucracy.
Yeah. I mean, when I was going around the world, I mean, my Triumph, the bike got stuck in Dubai for 3 or 4 days, and you know, at that point, I was getting more expert at what I was doing. But even
now, look, you're jumping me along on my questions here.
Sorry, Jeff. Carry on.
But now you've touched on the Triumph. I think it was intriguing to a lot of people. I've got a soft spot for Triumph anyway, but I thought Triumph Daytona as a round-the-world bike, it didn't seem the bike I'd naturally choose, you know. So why did you pick that with the low bars and, you know, a sports bike for one?
Well, certainly I used to be a racing cyclist, so I like the sports bike position to lean over the handlebars, you know, and I felt that I needed almost to race around the world. I mean, keeping within speed limits and stuff, but I certainly had to feel I was, you know, competing.
Yeah.
The Triumph was a good bike. I mean, it's a British bike, so I wanted to support them at the time. You know, and whilst the Daytona was kind of the end of the line, really, you know, they were moving on to new things. They were just developing the 595, but they felt it was too experimental to give to me.
Yeah.
And so I set off with that. And retrospectively, whilst I think it's quite a classic bike, funny enough, it was quite top heavy and it was a bit of a tank to drive around, but it did it, and it never broke down once.
No,
you know.
It's fantastic. One of the things, you know, combined with sort of choosing a bike and whatnot, but how do you go about planning a thing like this? I mean, where did it all start? You think, right, I'm going to do another round the world thing. I wouldn't know where to start, really. I suppose you pick the countries first, or pick a route, or...
Well, yes,
or is it such a big subject this would take 3 programmes alone?
It is quite a big subject, really. I try and keep things simple, you know, and it's very much an instinctive thing. I just kind of instinctively know where to go. Also, I keep half an eye out on the political, you know, framework and the news and stuff, and I know where to go.
Keep out of the war zones.
You bet, and where you can't go.
Now, you're just saying that. You have to clear this with the Guinness people then, do you? For you know, getting this sort of, I'm going to fly across that bit. So it all has to be recorded that that's what you're going to do, because it's not strictly sort of round the world on a motorbike if you fly in chunks, is it?
That's right, yeah. Guinness have about 20 different sort of, you know, rules about what you can and can't do to standardise it because of these political problems. They don't want people going off and copying what I'm doing, if you like, and then getting into real problems in Kurdistan, you know. So, you know, you obviously have to go around the world. You have to cover 18,000 miles. You have to go to antipodal points, which is, for example, Madrid, as opposed to Wellington on the other side of the world. You clearly have to use the same bike. You have to go round one way, and you know, get round as quickly as you can.
And how's it checked off? I mean, if you do a little rally in England, they might hand in your petrol receipts and take a photograph of a local landmark. I mean, what do you do? How do they know you've been where you have been?
Well, in the early days, you know, you could get a thumbprint from some Indian, in a restaurant or a cafe, or you get a McDonald's stamp or whatever you like, you know. That would have worked, and passport stamps and things, but now it's a lot more technical. You know, I took a GPS satellite sort of link on the back of my last bike, the mobile bike, and that linked to a passing satellite every hour. I think it was 4 minutes past the hour, and it had to be within a kind of 17-degree sector or something like that. It's very technical, but they got a link back home and they knew exactly where I was, so there's no chance of cheating. I mean, it's not that I would really, but there's no chance anyway of sticking it on train and.
So this is the high-tech bit, catching up with the sort of the real fundamental essence of biking, isn't it? The simple life, really, man and machine in an environment, but you got all this high-tech gizmo with you now if you want to do a world record. Yeah?
Absolutely, and increasingly so. You know, I mean, I know in the future we're going to be developing this element of my adventuring.
Yeah, and it brings me on to another thing, because these things, I think we've all watched you on your antics. You've filmed them yourself, haven't you? Which I often think is incredible, because I know you haven't had a crew with you. I know Henrietta's been with you on some shoots.
Yeah.
But in the main, it's you, isn't it, holding the camera? Is that right? Is that a secret to people?
No, not at all, no. I do it like this, you know. Here I'm talking to camera.
Here we are on top of the world,
No, it's great fun actually. I really enjoy it because also I have a feel for what I think motorbikers want to see. You know, of an adventure kind of thing, you know, and I think, well, what would they like to see here? What do they want me to talk about?
You've had these fantastic shots of you coming through a pass or across the desert, and I thought, you'd left the camera on the side of the road. I mean, have you lost any of these things, or have you forgotten one, did it?
Yeah, I remember doing this in New York actually. I had to be very careful that someone didn't leg it with a camera.
And there'll be more chat from Jeff and Nick on Two Wheels next week. Also next week, Wayne gets his wish, something bigger, but it's still only a 125. And I'll chat with a biker who's taking on a rather ambitious charity ride.